Hello and welcome to the next episode of Digital Energy's AI Dialogue series with me, Julian Walker. And I'm delighted to be joined by such a distinguished guest, Carsten Sonne-Schmidt, my colleague, Martin Helweg, and Dr. Chris Cooper joining us once again as we dive into ethical AI. And Chris, I'd like to start with you. How would you define AI integrity?
AI integrity for me, AI is about new insights from data. So for me, integrity comes back to the quality of that data that you're ingesting and utilizing to drive the models and provide outcomes.
Well, I think it's a difficult question. If you even take integrity without the AI, I think it has different meanings, in different cultures in different parts of the world, and depending on what product you have. And when you then add the AI, I think it's one of the biggest unanswered questions. What does that mean? And what does it mean if we don't have AI integrity?
Carsten, I want to bring you here. You know, people matter and words matter, but if you don't have ethical foundations, then, AI is at risk.
Yes. Ethics is, in general, a massive topic. And it's been a massive topic for the human race for the last many centuries. Now we see AI coming in and taking over a number of roles in organizations, and it's going very, very fast. I don't know what the latest count is, but AI might be filling millions of roles today. And is that done on a foundation of principles, on values, of code of ethics, like we have for human workers? I'm not sure. I haven't seen it, at least. And in that, words matters, because the titles matters, your list of values matters, all of these things that are not necessarily programmed, trained into your standard large language model. So how does an organization bring that in when they do their AI? Their own values, their own principles, and so on.
I think Carsten's really hit the nail on the head there. Because I think back, young as I am, I think back to my university years when I studied science, values, and ethics. And you could view it that, AI is like the science. But then when it comes to values and ethics, and we were briefly having this discussion earlier with Martin about, it's not just about the ethics, it's about the values. And how do we formulate and ensure that when we're using AI, that we've got the right values in place to build that ethical practice? That's the big question for me.
Yes, well said.
Which I think is interesting, because I think the majority of the debate is around the regulation of AI. But all our regulation, which have been in place, as you mentioned, for centuries, is based on a set of values. Those values will differ depending on what culture and what part of the world you come from.
And that drives the human behaviors.
But the conversation in the AI space tends to be around the regulation and companies waiting for the regulators to put something in place, when in fact, it should actually be based on the values and the ethics that you have before that. Having run companies for many years, we spend so much time explaining our employees about the values, teaching them the values.
Yeah.
I mean, months when a new joiner comes in, is spent on teaching them the values and how do we ethically behave and what does the various different things mean to us. And my sense is on the AI, we don't. We kind of let it just run, right?
I think the example, and this to your point, is when you join a new company, especially a company with strong values, you have an onboarding period. This is a new human intelligence you're bringing into your culture. So part of that onboarding is the values.
But that's based on a company having a predefined set of values, ethics, compliance, processes.
Exactly. But you don't do that for AI. You don't have an onboarding period of the values and ethics and code of conduct on AI. You just bring it in.
And what is scary, I agree with you 100%, but we even select our employees based on their values, and we test for it before the onboarding. So we have quite a rigorous process when it comes to ethics and values, when it comes to people. And then I find it fascinating but disturbing that we replace people with AI so quickly without going through the same thought process, right?
Yes.
I think in the marketplace, though, we don't say we're replacing people with AI. We imply that we're educating people in AI to allow them to embrace it so that it can improve the performance, improve the value that they're driving for the organization. And those that understand AI are in a stronger position to retain and grow and develop than those who don't.
I agree with you. We can do immensely more with AI. I
Yeah.
think most people will agree and understand that the possibilities are endless, and we're only starting to see the full potential of this. But I still think that we are handing over tasks, calculations, and I think fairly soon also complicated decisions to a machine that we haven't taught values or haven't defined ethics to, right?
And I think that then really goes into the realm of trust and then, transparency. That the sort of element that can you be guided by AI through critical decisions in operations, especially in the energy sector. That could become a really big factor.
Yeah, I mean, that again comes back to values. I'll use the analogy. I spent a lot of time working in the communication sector. And my personal view, this is a view according to Chris, when 3G came to market, it literally was the cart before the horse. It was a technology looking for a market, whereas now with 5G, it's the market that's really demanding that technology. So it's the right way around. And I think you're absolutely right there, Martin, that we need somehow to build those values into the practice, the process, in the way in which we deploy AI.
Yeah. But I think, Julian, to your point, certainly from my side, being more on the business side than on the digital side, I think the challenge is how much do we trust the AI? And that leads to how transparent will it be, the result that it, either a decision or the process that it spits out. And what I would worry about on the medium to long term is accountability in a process like that, and particular in the energy sector. If you take the oil and gas within the energy sector, the consequences of getting something wrong is catastrophic, both in terms of environment, humans, economic. The consequences can be quite high. And if you then rely on a decision process that might be non-transparent, and you start having the risk of not having accountability within your processes because you have handed over too much, I think then we have a real issue at hand, right?
You raise a really good point, though. Is it accountability in the process? Who ultimately owns that accountability? Is it the organization? Is it the individual that wrote the code? Is it a third party? Who is it that holds that accountability? Because the wrong decision, the wrong actions could be based on false data. And at the end of the day, the data resides with the company. So
But isn't
we've
that where
we've really
you should
opened a can of worms here.
Isn't that where you should have some AI principles that sort of defines, okay, do we allow AI to make decisions in this space, or should there be a human in between? And then it can almost be seen as a software tool that is doing calculations for you, but there's always a human in between making sort of the quality test of whatever is being spit out.
If you look at what's been happening so far with AI, definitely that's the approach that's been taken almost globally, I'll say. It's definitely around try, test before you deploy at scale. But I think the pressures on organizations today on the investments they're making in AI, and sadly a lot of it is because of fear of missing out. It's not necessarily targeted at the right business problems, but the challenge then becomes how do you ensure that it's being done correctly?
And you don't have someone having to test 1,000 decisions every day.
Yeah, because again, we are moving very quickly now from model-based AI to generative to agentic, and it's taking actions on behalf of organizations. And as we move to autonomous, it's not relying on humans. Who has that, to your point, accountability?
I mean, then, Chris, it could be sort of how do you embed ethics then into the workflow, not just as a policy document that you all just have here or you spit into the AI, sort of bringing the values into action within companies.
Indeed, we need to find a way of building the values and the ethics into the science, into the AI up front. But as we're discussing around this table, we're realizing that unfortunately we're in a position where we're accelerating at such a pace and AI is accelerating everything at such a pace. We're then trying to retrofit that afterwards to ensure that we are governing ourselves. Where's the regulatory requirements? Do we have regulatory requirements? Is there a regulatory framework that we're working to on every deployment of AI?
But should we look at it in a different way? If we all accept we're bringing in a new intelligence, should we look at redefining the organizational structure, the RACI charts, the workflows, the DOAs, because they have typically been built in a 100% human setup. Mm-hmm. But you bring in this new intelligence, does that mean that you redefine the organizational chart? Because intelligence are suddenly coming in different places.
I think that's a really good point, and also to your point, Chris. I feel is that we're taking this AI and we're putting it like the last few floors of a tall building, but we're not really making sure that the structure and the foundation can actually hold it. And would we be better off taking a step back and then securing the foundation and the structure? I feel the reason that it isn't happening is a couple of different reasons. One of them, it will take longer because you have to go back. If you have to redesign the entire organization or structure and the processes, it will be costly. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think there's the element that you're speaking about, Chris, is that people feel they're missing out.
Yeah.
So it feels like that people are saying, that companies are saying, let's push down on the accelerator because all the other ones, the race have started. And what you are arguing is we go back in the garage and redesign the chassis on our car, right?
Yeah.
Let's go. Which
That's
I think is the
analogy.
challenge, right? But I think,
of course.
But I think your point is, should we take a step back and say, okay, how do we do this? If we were to design this from scratch, how would we do this?
It's not like organizations are not used to reorganizing themselves. In my career, I think I reorganized 4 times. So it does happen.
But it tends to be within the same models and 2 or 3 different, and then it goes in some sort of circular movement, right?
Yes, okay, but there should be some muscle memory to do that exercise.
But the
Yes,
one thing I'm definitely seeing, certainly in this regional marketplace, is that from an organisational standpoint, you look at what the government's doing here in the UAE, mandating a chief AI officer, for every business. So maybe, I think that's the right step forward. But then the question becomes: is it that individual or that group of individuals that then hold the accountability for the solutions that are deployed? I don't think that's a fair thing. And where does that sit? Where does that chief AI officer sit? Do they report into the CIO from a technology standpoint? Do they report into the business? In my experience, more and more they're reporting into the business because it's about driving incremental value for the business.
So I think there's also an element here where is regulation going to sort of impede innovation, or how do you balance both? That's going to be key. Ethics in AI to also allow the innovation to come out and to be put forward.
I think that's an important point, because here we're discussing the ethics, which I think is there's some issues attached with this, right? Because what there obviously is the upside of AI, which is massive, and release resources, innovations, the spectrum of what you can do just multiply, right? So of course people also get greedy and want to move faster, right? Back to the race car analogy. Of course, you're driving a certain speed, and you can push the accelerator and you go faster, right? So I think that's part of the challenge, is that the upside of AI is so tremendous, right?
Absolutely, and I think we're going to have to wrap it up here. But fascinating conversation. But before we go, AI ethics in energy will succeed when? What would you say is needed? Does have ethics in AI succeed, or be brought on in the right way?
Well, let me position it slightly differently. We're already deploying AI solutions across the value chain of the energy sector. What we need to do is be sure that where we can, we're deploying the right values and ethics in those processes, in the way in which we're deploying those solutions.
I foresee 2 scenarios where this will be. One is that we wait for regulation, which means we're probably waiting a decade, in which time we're waiting another decade because AI would have moved us quite far ahead, further than the regulation. The other option is that you will see pressure from consumers, from business communities, to build in ethics, right? I'm not a fan of waiting for regulation. I'm a fan of being master of your own destiny, and I think it's up to the companies. If we feel that values is important towards our employees, we should also feel it's valuable towards our AI machine. So hopefully that will happen first. If I had to bet, I would bet when the regulation is in place, which I unfortunately think is not the correct time.
Thanks everyone for watching.